everybody. Bob Chick back with David Baye. Welcome back to The Last Rep. We are fresh off the heels of the Arnold Classic, David, 2016 edition. And what a great weekend it was, my friend.
Yeah, no, always a fun show in Columbus. You get the biggest of both the bodybuilding and the fitness and celebrities and sports and everything all into one place for one weekend. So it's always a fun time and an interesting mix. Most of the pro shows, everything's all just the fitness industry within itself, and they bring all kinds of things together for the Arnold. So it's always a fun weekend, and this was no exception.
Well, no, and certainly lots of surprises throughout the weekend, David. I would be more shocked if Frank Dukes himself showed up.
we, so the story, I'm sitting in the International Hall of Fame ceremony, the ceremony that they do each year,
Right.
inducting various people from the athletic world, and I see a guy in there, and he's got his shades on, big dude, kind of hanging out, and looks like he's probably somebody important, but I'm not sure who he was. And I actually asked Jim Mannion and his wife, "Yeah, who is that guy?" And they didn't really know. I get a text message a few hours later from Bob, appreciating my love of all things 80s.
Absolutely.
Frank Dukes is here, and I'm like, you gotta be shitting me. And so what I did, the second you sent me that text message, I went and I Googled Frank Dukes today to see what he looks like, and sure enough, it was
There
the
he
guy
is.
I was asking about. So we, as you guys probably saw, we got to meet him a little bit later, lined up an interview. He actually a really nice, really fun guy. Got a chance to talk quite a bit off camera, and there's a ton of controversy around Frank
Sure.
and the accuracy of his stories and his recollections and his history and yada yada yada. As a martial arts fan, I kind of knew about all that. Like, is he full of it or whatever? But we just wanted to have fun, roll with it. He was a super nice guy. I wanted to hear his side of the story and had a lot of fun with it. So definitely the highlight of my weekend, meeting Frank Dukes, the real life blood sport guy.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We got a chance to hang out and all that. I actually had an 8x10 autographed picture of him for you, and I couldn't get to them. They came to the Sunday seminar I was doing with Arnold, and they had to leave before I actually got off the stage. So I'll catch up with you later on that one, bro. But I got an 8x10 for you.
I actually I messaged him. Yes, I sent a text message to Frank Dukes.
Nice.
He's like, I got to get some autographed pictures for you, so I'll have to get a few of those. But yeah, super nice guy. I mean, funny and real outgoing and big. I'll tell you what, that was the biggest misrepresentation from Bloodsport.
Yes.
I think Van Damme's only like 5'7", 5'8". Frank's a good 6'3" and a big guy,
Yeah.
and his hands. You can tell, regardless of what somebody wants to say around his past, you can tell he's punched a lot of shit because his hands are about the size of catcher's mitts. It was almost like, holy cow.
You can tell even you and him were messing around with a couple of moves and stuff. You can tell he's still got moves, and he moves like a martial arts guy. Like he still has that presence about him,
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
Very cool, but glad you enjoyed it, my friend. I knew nobody on this
Yes,
planet
I did.
would have appreciated this more than you, so that's why I texted you immediately.
Absolutely not. It was the surprise of my weekend. I was, that Dolph Lundgren was supposed to be there for the International Hall of Fame ceremony. Something came up where he couldn't make it. That was going to be like my big highlight of the weekend was meeting Dolph Lundgren. Disappointed, then surpassed. It was awesome.
Excellent. Well, we had full coverage all throughout the weekend. We had the entire team out there, Sugar Shaw and Ray, along with Peter McGuff. You and I, of course, doing our thing. Great to have
Callie
Peter.
joined along this year. That was a lot of fun.
Callie Bundy, yeah, into the mix, doing the women's portions, and she's a whole lot of fun and great sense of humor about her. Listen, Peter back in the mix was a great thing, bro. I love working with Peter. It's his element. He loves every bit of it, and of course, he never fails to disappoint with his commentary and witty, clever wordage that we had going on during that. Peter was just making stuff up, I think.
That's just off the cuff. He can roll with the best of them. Don't try to walk through an expo with Peter ever, because he gets stopped every 2 seconds for pictures right in the middle of the hallway. Everybody's got their booth setups and stuff, so people are waiting in line for pictures, but people stopping him left and right. Just goes to show how much respect Peter gets from everybody in this industry, even the fans and everybody else.
Well, speaking of the craziness of the weekend, David, we got some craziness coming up this weekend. This is not a topic we cover a lot of, but always brings a smile to my face. But our good friend Lee Thompson coming up with his NSL show coming up this week. Big debut, lots to expect. So I figured I would do all the fans out there a service and tell them what they can expect from the words of Lee himself, who's put out many videos throughout the last 3 months or so of what to expect at his show. So I just jotted down a few notes of things over the past couple of months to let anybody know who is in the area.
Just a few notes.
A few 10 pages of notes, yeah. And, well, first thing you can expect, I mean, this is he said the other show was just a test show, so I guess that doesn't count. But this is the real show. So a big 2-day event coming.
I don't know if it's 2 days anymore, though. No, I think they said that. I think it might have actually gotten cut down to 1. I don't know if it's 2 days.
So it's not a 2-day event.
From what I had initially heard, it was going to be 2 days, and then
right
as we had predicted, I think everybody predicted there were some number issues. So the notes that you jotted down, I'm not sure that the 2-day thing is. I can't say for sure.
Okay, well, 2-day now a 1-day, but show's still going on. But they still got the pros and the amateurs that are going to be there. So I guess we'll see some sort of a pro show there. $80,000 on the line, David.
Yeah, I don't know. For a pro show, that's a pretty solid purse, and he touted that quite a bit when he first started off. Obviously, he got quiet about it. I don't know how that's gonna work with the prize money. The interesting thing about the prize money that Lee was gonna put out is he said he was gonna make it equivalent across the boards for all the divisions. I don't, to be honest with you, just from an analytical standpoint purely, I don't actually know that he has enough athletes to award like a 1st through 5th in each division. I don't think he has 5 bodybuilders. I don't know if he's got 5. I don't know if he's got 5 athletes. So I don't know how that prize money breakdown is.
So there may not even be a pro show, let alone
just on a side note. Just on a side note about prize money in equivalency, he brought this up before, and this is something I spoke on. In sports, money that these athletes are paid, whatever, is based on perceived entertainment value. It's not based on equality. And so to come out and make some sort of argument like, oh, the women deserve just as much as the men, in the regular workforce where it's not an entertainment industry, sure they do, absolutely. I'll argue that all day. Does the WNBA players make as much as the NBA players? No. In fact, LeBron James makes more in 1 year than the entire WNBA. The entire WNBA. Why? Because of the entertainment value of that. So when Lee comes out and says, well, we're going to have equivalent pay for everybody, just should a bikini competitor make as much as a pro bodybuilder? No, absolutely not. And they don't. And this, let me make this very clear. Bikini competitors do not work as hard as bodybuilders. Now, you're going to have a couple of bikini competitors throwing their hands up in the air and saying, yes, we do. We work just as hard. No, you don't. And here's why. Do the bikini competitors work hard? Yes. And I have defended that up and down across this industry because I know some of these girls, you have track athletes, gymnasts, soccer players. But to get in shape for the bikini division, the shape they want you to be in, the level of body fat that you need to achieve does not require as hard of work as a bodybuilder. So you cannot make an argument from any standpoint, nor does the weightlifting or anything, that a bikini girl works as hard as a bodybuilder, nor does it draw as much traffic. So to say you're going to give equal prize money to all divisions because they all deserve the same thing and they all work as hard as each other, no, they don't. That's completely false. There's not as much draw to bikini as there is bodybuilding, and the bikini girls don't work as hard. And again, I'm sure you're going to have a couple bikini girls who just pick out they don't work as hard out of everything I just said, but I do have respect for the bikini competitors, but to say that they deserve as much as the bodybuilders, it's horseshit.
Well, if they get their sequins in a bunch, that's their problem, David, but you'll hear about it, of course, on the boards, no question about it. Well, hey, listen, $80,000 is $80,000. I don't know how that gets split up, or if it's $80,000 for each category, but I guess we'll see. I mean, that's what he put out. 2 stages going on at the expo. Custom lighting, a catwalk into the audience.
I don't know that. I don't know about that. I feel like and all this comes off of what I hear. And trust me, guys. Of course, for as much as I don't want to pay attention to it, I hear a lot. I heard that the 2-stage thing might be. Maybe I think I'm on social media stalking Lee too much, and I'm sure he's going to watch the video. I'm sure he'll find a way
He
to spin
stalks
that.
us, so that's okay. Everybody's
I've got
stalking
a
everybody
man
these days.
crush, but
Hey,
I
that's
don't know
okay.
that
Listen, one stage is
I don't know they're
fine.
going to be doing 2 stages.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what you do with the other one, but I thought it was kind of weird right off the bat. But okay, well, we'll bring it down. So one day instead of two, one stage instead of two, probably no catwalk into the audience, custom lighting. Haven't heard anything about it, but they still got the custom monster truck, with the NSL logo and the 18 wheeler. That's probably going to be there on display.
The You mean the $100,000 truck that?
Yeah, you remember the one you had the picture of it and they were putting it
Yeah,
together,
you know.
world tour.
Look, here. I understand from a business standpoint that at some point you have to do advertising and marketing and promoting your business. But don't you think, as an athlete, you'd rather see maybe some of that money go towards the athletes or something good, and spending well into the six figures on a truck and a trailer? How about take that money and give $500 to the guy who needed a new truck? The spray paint.
You know what? That's the spray painted '93 Subaru or whatever it was. That could go a long way to that guy. And it's funny because we never saw anything about that again.
No, that monster truck, he posted something on Facebook about it, and you never heard about it again. And you know damn well, had he actually had it, I don't know, I shouldn't say that because part of him, I think Lee likes to, pull out all the stops and have surprises. So who knows? They might roll that thing out in the middle of the show. But I would like to, or I would think that if he had it done already, he'd be posting pictures of it all over the place.
They will be done. Well, listen, if all else fails here, now this show's in Houston. Coming up this weekend, actually, David, we have the Phil Heath show on the same day. And I know Lee's mentioned many times he welcomes competition. He thinks it's good for business and all that. And, he's got some. Obviously, the Phil Heath is not going to be a small show. We're expecting, of course, a sold-out attendance. God knows how many athletes there, 600, 700, 800, who knows what's going to be there.
There should be easily over 500.
But there is a second show that they've got in Connecticut. So on the same day as this weekend, they got the show in Houston and the one in Connecticut going on. Although I got to be honest, I haven't heard it mentioned in about 5 weeks now.
I honestly, that show in Connecticut, I have no idea what's going on with that. I mean, I guess I didn't even know you're like to me right now. I don't know if when you're getting things up and running, like maybe have one at a time just to see how that goes. And the biggest surprise to me, I guess, is I would think this early in the game he would want to be at these shows to kind of oversee them and see how they're going on. But I don't. Good luck.
Well, listen, you can always have Slim Thug shoot over to Connecticut and probably, make sure everything's running right and the, transparent scoring systems in place and, all that.
You could have Slim Thug in Connecticut and Joel Osteen in Houston.
That's and Billy Blanks Jr. He's been added into the mix. So,
oh, good.
Junior.
Wait, Junior.
Yeah, not Billy Blanks. It's his son.
Oh, well. There's some celebrity power.
Hey, it's like having Fabio at your show. You kidding me, bro? The people will be pouring in there. So anyway, that's new, but that's for anybody that's interested that's been following the story. Those things you can expect or not expect this weekend. We'll certainly be keeping a tab on it just for grins. But listen, bigger news going on, David. We were talking about the Arnold Expo. All kinds of celebrities, people. It was jam-packed, stupidly jammed. I mean, you couldn't even get around there as always. There was just a millions of people in there, and but you saw some big stars yourself. Most notably, I heard Big Ramy was in the house.
Yeah, I tell you what, man, I got a pretty cool story about Ramy, and he looks monstrous as he always does. So you guys might remember back in November we headed down to the Kentucky Muscle. Young man Colin Clark, has Down syndrome. One of the only bodybuilders I think we've ever seen. Well, when I was down there in November, I had said to Colin and his trainer and his parents, if you guys make your way to the Arnold, let me know and we'll see what we can do for you. I talked to, Bob Lormer, the promoter of the show, and Matt Lors, the media guy, and they rolled out the red carpet for this kid. So VIP tickets to the meet and greet, to the show, expo passes, you name it. The Lormers and Matt set this kid up big time. And, he was at the expo Friday and Saturday. His trainer actually knows the guy from the Egg Whites International booth, so they were hanging out there.
Yeah, my buddy Matt.
Yeah, he had a chance to kind of run around and meet some of the people. But as you know, at the expo, the lines for some of the top pros can be 3-4 hours long.
Sure.
He's a little bit of a shy kid. It was a little bit crazy. So after I had talked to them on Friday and Saturday, they hadn't really had a chance to meet, some of the big names. So I stopped over Saturday morning, went and grabbed him from the Egg Whites International booth, went over and met Jay, met Branch and Johnny Jackson, and we were bouncing around, Justin Compton, those guys. And so we go over to the GAT booth, and it was Sadiq Hadzovic, Ramy, and then their powerlifter guy, which I totally forget his name, but looks like he's 7 feet tall, just massive.
Nice.
And so the GAT people let us skip the line, and Sadiq's like, come on back. So everybody got to go back behind the booth, and Colin and his trainer Glenn are getting pictures and stuff. And so Colin goes to ask Ramy for an autograph, and he hands him his picture, and he signs his picture, and then he gives it back to Colin, and there were some more pictures and stuff. Well, Colin had these little it was like a 5x7 card with his picture, like a before and after, and it said Colin Nation, a picture from his stage, and he was kind of giving those out at the Egg Whites booth to kind of promote some of the stuff that they're doing for raising awareness and funds for the Down syndrome stuff, and Colin's kind of talking to Sadiq or whatever, and Ramy grabs one of this kid's cards off the desk and grabs this marker, and Ramy's 10 feet wide, and Colin's a shorter guy. He's about 5'2", 5'3". So Ramy grabs his card, grabs a marker, comes over to the kid, and he leans over, and in his broken English, and if you've heard him talk, the guy sounds like a teddy bear. He says, "Now you sign for me," and he hands it. He hands it to him. I'm telling you, man, it was one of those moments where it was like right in the feelings, yeah. Oh, dude, big time, and it was, everybody knows Ramy's a nice guy, but it was just, it was a reminder that amongst all the hoopla of the expo and all this, and, some of the bad press that the fitness industry gets, you have some people with some pretty big hearts, and to watch somebody like Ramy turn around and ask Colin for an autograph was probably the coolest thing I've seen in my 3 years of covering this sport. So, I don't think Colin's trainer was kind of talking to Sadiq and the powerlifter, and had I turned away for 2 seconds, I wouldn't have seen it. Ramy didn't do it. He didn't do it for any kind of publicity or anything like that. He just did it because he's, for as big of a dude as he is, it seems like he's got an even bigger heart. And it was truly one of the coolest things that I've seen. It was neat.
A great professional, a great champion, Big Ramy. We're going to be looking for big things from Big Ramy this year. I don't know what he's competing in next, maybe New York again or, something else. But hopefully we'll absolutely see him back on the Olympia stage. If there's going to be a breakout year for Ramy, I think you might see it this year. If this guy could establish himself right up there, listen, Kai Green is no longer.
I think yeah, Ramy kind of did last year after the Olympia.
Yeah.
He went over to Prague in Spain and beat Sean Roden and Dennis Wolf. He's still Dexter still outdid him, but he beat two of the guys that bested him at the Olympia the last few years. So yeah, Ramy's on his way up.
And Kai Green, as you know, we interviewed after the show. Obviously, by this time, everybody knows Kai won. We'll get into that in a little bit. But in our interview, I asked him point blank, "Are you going to be on the Olympia stage?" And his answer was all over the place. So he said something.
Metaphysically speaking, in the rhetorical sense of the word, am I going to be there? Yeah,
that's probably more direct than what I got. But yeah, he didn't want to answer the question, and that's cool. Listen, I love Kai when it comes to interviews because he's such a character. He's got his own style, and that's cool. Listen, in this business, we'll take 10 just like him as he keeps things interesting, David. So, but bottom line is, I don't think there's any guarantee, despite obviously being qualified, which was never really a question. I don't care if he goes next week and he wins the one in Australia as well. Bottom line is will we see Kai Green on an Olympia stage again?
I think yes. I think, even with everything that happened last year, I think two things about Kai. One, he's a competitor through and through, and he wants to be on the Olympia stage. He wants to go toe to toe with Phil. Two, Kai Green cares about his fans. Kai knows that his fans want to see him on the Olympia stage. You could argue that half of the people that come to Las Vegas come to see Kai. So, obviously I can't speak for him or to his intentions, but come September this year, I think we'll see Kai back on the Olympia stage.
Well, Kai certainly, as you said, a huge fan base, very popular, obviously, with the bodybuilding universe. And I would say, obviously, the most popular guy at the Arnold by terms of applause. The second most popular guy, however, was Branch Warren.
Yeah, all the talk about Branch, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But the crowd's still love him. The crowd loves Branch, and there's something to be said. We'll talk about his physique and his placing a little bit, but the crowds love the hard worker. They love the blue collar thing. And for all the people who say on the boards that they don't like him stomping his feet and hitting most musculars, and that's a cheesy posing routine, you wouldn't guess it by the reaction from the crowd there. He comes out and people love hearing that, and he gets people off their feet, and people love Branch. He's an easy guy to like, and that shows at the shows and at the Arnold.
Well, speaking of the posing routine, now huge topic of conversation, and of course it continues on. You and I were speculating before the show, would it come into play? Actually, on this very show, David, I gave the scenario of a possible scenario, Cedric versus Kai, which ultimately played out. Very cool. And really what we were looking at is, how is this going to play out in terms of posing routine? Kai going to be very eclectic, very Kai Green on stage, certainly didn't disappoint. Brought the house down, very exciting routine, very cool. Didn't do too much of the theatrics, but, it was definitely a Kai Green routine. Cedric, on the other hand, classical in his approach, slow, a bite too slow. But, again, way to the right when it comes to comparison. The interesting thing is, it was close in the more. Personally, I had Cedric ahead after prejudging. That can be debated. We'll discuss that. Did Arnold's wish of having the posing round being scored ultimately backfire on Cedric McMillan?
I would have to I want to look at like an actual breakdown of all the scorecards and stuff like that. But I think it could have. And here's what ended up happening at the Arnold. I'm sure most of the guys watching saw the posing routines, and you didn't have to be there like we say all the time if you were watching it. But this was my take on it. Cedric hits classical poses, and he has classic transitions. But the pace of his routine for me was just a hair too slow. Now, the actual poses he's sitting itself, great. His transitions were really good. The routine itself as a whole, I guess I could compare it to Hidetada's. Very similar poses, but Hidetada uses a little bit more dramatic music. His transitions are a little bit faster. And so I guess if I had to really get nitpicky about Cedric's routine, a little bit lack of drama to it, I guess. If you go back and you watch the Lee Labradas and the Ed Corneys, some of these guys who are really good classical posers, it's a slower routine, and they're hitting the classical poses, but they added this aspect of drama to it. And I think Cedric, with just a minor tweaking, could take a good routine and have it be right up there with Hidetada. Now, Kai, on the other hand, it's no secret to anybody that I have not been a fan, for the most part, of Kai's routines in the past. One, I think he usually transitions too fast, doesn't hold his poses long enough. You don't get to see that. I'm not a fan of the headstands, the somersaults, and some of that. If I got to bite my tongue here, but I'll say it, I don't care. I thought Kai's routine was really good. He kept the good parts of his other routines, got rid of some of the stuff that I think is nonsense, that I don't think belongs on a bodybuilding stage, and held his poses a little longer, had really good music. As somebody who wasn't much of a fan of Kai's routines in the past, I found myself being like, this is actually pretty badass.
Sure.
So I think at the end of the day, Kai's routine was it was a better routine. It was more entertaining to me. And just from a technical standpoint, hitting the poses and the way he transitioned and everything, Kai brought the house down with his routine. It was, like I said, not normally a big fan of his routines,
Sure.
but this one was it was actually really good.
Well, two questions for you, David. There was two, we'll call them mandates that were put out. One was basically, we'll call it the gut check. Everybody basically instructed, look at guys, be careful of your waistlines, be cognizant in your transitions. We don't want to see the big bellies. We don't want to see anybody looking like a bottle and all that. And two, the posing. Okay, we're going to score the posing at the Arnold, so you will be scored on that. You know, that needs to be kind of brought up and all that. Did we see any significant difference in either of those?
Yeah. Well, this is, as I said in one of our wrap-up videos, a little bit of the conundrum. The guy who had the best posing routine also had the biggest waist, and that is Kai Green.
Right.
I've seen Kai's waist look worse. So for Kai, his waist wasn't bad, and in his defense, he's carrying so much muscle.
Yeah.
I mean, there is so much muscle everywhere. Like, you can only build thighs so big and a back so big without having a torso that grows to
Correct.
accommodate it. I mean, you can't. I physically, I don't think you can have somebody as massive as Kai up top and in the legs, and not. I mean, people forget the torso. That's the connector. You know, that's what
Right.
supports the two of them. I don't think you're going to find somebody as massive as Kai with a tiny, tiny waist. I think the closest you're ever going to see is a 98 or a 99 Coleman.
Well, let me just tell people, for those who don't know, I talked to George Farah the day before. I've known George forever, of course. Everybody knows he's Kai's trainer. He showed me a picture of Kai, actually, which was a day or so before the finals. Of course, he looked great, big as a house, you know, the whole deal. He said Kai was a little bit concerned because he had just dipped into the 270s. All right, so just to give people an idea, now Kai is what, David, 5'8"?
5'8", if that.
Okay.
He's pretty short.
Yeah, but he just looks short because he's as wide as he is tall, like the tank, like Dixon. But yeah, let's give him 5'8". He's 5'8". He was in competition shape at 278 pounds. Now I don't know what he ended up on stage. I'm going to guess probably in the mid to low 70s. You're going to drop water and all that stuff. That's still a tremendous amount of muscle to be carrying for 5'8" or any other height for that matter.
Yeah, you're just like, physically, you're just not gonna have a skeleton, a muscular. I don't even know what you want to call it, but to have an upper body that big and legs that big, you have to have something connecting the two and supporting it, and you're just not gonna have a tiny waist on somebody that big. I mean, Cedric's waist obviously more streamlined than Kai's. Sure. That's where I felt Cedric really jumped ahead of Kai, was in his front shots when the taper really became dramatic.
And interestingly, I think he may have lost it in the side shots because that's where Kai was beating him.
Yeah, Kai's really, really thick in his side shots. I mean, the front to back on his chest is enormous. His hamstrings hang down to his calves.
Yeah.
And his arms and his side chest and his side tricep look ridiculous. The back shots, I thought, were pretty even from the waist up. Cedric V-tapers a little, where Kai's lats kind of belly out and look a little bit more meaty. The big spot where I think Kai gets Cedric in the back shots is there's just more mass in his legs. If you look at the pictures, when Kai's hitting his back shots, more thickness in his legs. Cedric's hamstrings had good detail, really good shape. But I don't know, man. Kai was he was massive.
Well, ended up posing. Now, short of Kai Green himself, again, didn't do anything out of the norm. That's kind of normal Kai. Actually, I think he may have brought it down a notch for the Arnold. I actually asked him that question, but I had no idea what he said. But the only other really outstanding routine for me was Hidetada. Now, again, that's kind of normally what Hidetada does. Slow, dramatic, very powerful music, greatness transitions. One of the best posers there today. Taking those two aside, because they didn't do anything out of the norm, I actually did not really see any significant, plus or minus to anybody's routine. I mean, they look like a normal show to me.
Yeah, and and that's and I don't want people to take that as being a bad thing.
No.
And I think what we had talked about before, we asked Tony Freeman, is scoring the posing round going to make any difference in how you pose? And he's like, no, I'm a professional. I want to put on the best show I can every time. Jose had a great routine in the 212s. Guy Sister Nino had a great routine, posed a version of Hallelujah.
Yep.
Great song. I mean, there was a lot of guys with really good routines, but these guys always have good routines. So I don't know that saying, hey, we're going to score this made a bunch of guys say, oh, well, now we got to get it together. They're professionals. They have it together every show. Did they probably tweak it a little bit more? Yeah. I did notice Justin Compton, worked a little bit more classical poses and some of the slower stuff in his routine. So if I had to pick somebody who looked like they did try to do something a little bit different or put a little more effort into it, it would have been Justin. But most of those guys, like I said, they're already trying to put together great routines for the fans and just as a matter of pride when you're getting on stage as a professional. So I don't think it really changed that much. I do agree with you 100%. I think Kai did tone it down
Sure.
for the Arnold, and it, like I said, it made it really good.
All right. Well, let's get to the topic of the week, David. The boards have been lighting up ever since we got back. And what you got here is tale of two tapes. You got Branch Warren taking fifth in the Open. You got John Meadows placing towards the back of the pack and in the 212. Now, the big question is, well, we don't understand. Both guys similar in nature. You're telling us be the one Branch, because he has that crazy conditioning and all that muscle and all that, he gets rewarded. But John Meadows brings the same thing, and, he doesn't get any love from the judges. What gives? And there's an answer to this. Listen, everybody's got their take. I'm going to give you my 2 cents on it real quick. Listen, the bottom line is this. First of all, let's not compare John Meadows and Branch Warren. All right? They are two different people in two different divisions. Now, I understand we have similarities, okay? So, yeah, we get it. We're not stupid. But the bottom line is you're talking about Branch Warren, a guy who's won the Arnold Classic, a guy who's won numerous Most Musculars at the Arnold Classic awards when they used to give that. He's also taken as high as second in the Olympia to Jay Cutler. All right, so the bottom line is this. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's, with all due respect to John Meadows, miles ahead of where John Meadows ever is or was. Now, is Branch Warren what he used to be? Absolutely not. You and I have been the first ones to say, look, he's not. He can't do what he did 2-3 years ago. He was never the most aesthetically pleasing. He's the first one to admit that. He got away on his muscularity, his gnarliest physique, whatever that word is you came up with the other day, and just blatant conditioning. So that's always propelled him. So let's take it one at a time, though. Your take on Branch Warren taking fifth place?
I had Branch Warren placing behind Max, Evan, and Juan. I think, to me, Max Charles was a pretty clear for fifth. I would have liked to have seen a two-person call-out with Max and Justin. The top three, to me, were the top three.
Sure.
Josh Lenardowitz, to me, came out a little bit flat, but as soon as he started posing, he
came alive. Yeah.
Big time. So Josh, first 10 seconds on stage, right after that, Josh established himself in the top three. I would have, like I said, liked to have seen a two-person call-out. Generally, the judges don't do two-person call-outs unless it's like the top two, so we didn't see that. But I would have liked to have seen Max and Justin compared. But I had Max no lower than fifth place, and then I think you could have kind of flip-flopped Evan and Juan. Evan was downsized just a little bit, but to me, he looked good. Still good muscularity, still
Sure.
wide as a house. I think Juan may have been just a hair off his best, but he still looked good.
Agreed.
So, if I had to put in, a scoring, that would have been fifth Max, 6 and 7, Juan and Evan, or Evan and Juan, and then eighth maybe Branch, but maybe would have liked to have seen him against some of the other guys, but we didn't. So, and look, I can say it a million times. Like, I love Branch's work ethic. Been a big fan all the way back to when he turned pro and stuff like that, but he's just not the competitor he was. And to me, if I'm analyzing the overall components of the physiques and then breaking it down pose for pose, which is essentially what you have to do when you're
Sure.
judging it, I did not have Branch ahead of Max, Evan, or Juan.
Now, that said, can you make a case for Branch beating those guys? Now, the reason why I say that is, in some of my responses to the guys, what I basically pointed out, and I'm going to reemphasize once again, you and I both said in our post-show wrap-up, neither one of us had Branch finishing ahead. I could have seen him a spot or two lower. I don't know if I go quite to eighth as you have, but listen, that's up for debate. But the other guys all have issues. Max Charles, while greatly improved, I can come up with 5, 6 things on him. I mean, that as why he doesn't beat any of the other guys, that type of thing. I thought he looked good, but upper body's way bigger than the lower body. Legs need to really come up. Not a lot of detail in the legs in terms of separation. From the back, he's weak, and especially narrow in his back poses. The back needs a little bit more detail. But listen,
I'm going to disagree with you there. I think he's as wide as a house, but I do think he's lacking a little bit of his detail, and he seems to have a bit of a hard time hitting his back double bicep. If you watch his,
that's what I mean, David. Because you're right. When he's standing there, he's a wide guy. You know what I mean? But when he hits his poses, he crunches. It's almost like he can't bring his back out.
He's got a little bit of a hard time with his back shots, and his front most muscular. He's as wide as 3 or 4 guys put together. It's crazy. It almost seems like he's got a little bit of a hard time hitting some of his back shots.
Juan, I thought, was just off. I mean, I didn't just see. I've seen Juan better previously. His legs, to me, almost looked like they took a step back in terms of. It looked like they were kind of coming up last year. I actually think that they kind of went back to where he was before. I think most of that's just because his upper body has actually gotten bigger.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I talked about with Peter a lot is when you're in a position like Max and Juan, like when your upper body is disproportionately large to your legs, do you want to stop training your upper body and hope your legs come up? And Peter's response, he always used to tell guys, don't stop training your freaky body parts to wait for something lagging to come up in hopes that you'll balance out your physique. Because, like let's say Juan Morel's legs don't come up and they're at where they're at right now is as big as they're going to get. The guy's still top 10 at the Olympia, which is ridiculously amazing.
Sure.
But if Juan had to bring his upper body down to match his legs from an aesthetic standpoint, he might not be placing where he's at. So, somebody like Juan, genetically just has a crazy upper body, and as to whether his legs will ever match that upper body, it's hard to say. I mean, overall, the guy's physique is ridiculous. Also, not like Juan won't use this as an excuse, and he never has, and he never will. And I'm not saying it's an excuse for him. He's got a newborn, so I know this entire prep.
Sure.
His wife was pregnant and stuff like that, and I guarantee Juan won't use that as an excuse. But you have to take into consideration that maybe that changes the dynamic of the last month of prep when you got a baby at home. But what you're saying as far as being able to make an argument, that, like I said, to me, I didn't have it that way, but I do understand, like, okay, well, somebody's got to take 5th, somebody's got to take 6th, somebody's got to take 7th, somebody's got to take 8th. And from my understanding, and we've had a chance to talk a little bit with the judges, it sounds like that's kind of where the judges were at too. I don't think, and I know the guys on the boards are like, explain 5th place. And from the feedback that I got from the judges, they were all kind of like, nobody really had us. Like that 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, we could have gone this way, that way, way, this way.
I mean, I talked to Steve Weinberger myself and other judges. But the general overview I got was exactly that, David. That look at it, after 4th, and the only reason it was after 4th is because Justin Compton came in off, and that could be a whole other conversation for another time because that kid's got potential just everywhere. But listen, he was off. He gets it. He knows it. He didn't bitch about it. He was placed accordingly. But those 4 kind of separated themselves from the pack to me. Then it was a crapshoot. Honestly, could you have made Evan 5th place? Sure. But I can make a case for any one of those guys. I mean, honestly, I can mix them up.
Personally, and this is where it's like, okay, well, had they put Evan in 5th place, personally, would I have had Evan ahead of Max? No, I would not have had Evan ahead of Max. Had Evan gotten 5th place, would I be sitting here right now being like, oh, that's terrible? No, I'd have been like, okay, I didn't really have it that way. But so I guess, like, there's a lot of people that are, kind of up in arms about Branch, and I guess they want to know what the judges were thinking. And from what I understand from the judges were kind of like, nobody really established themselves as that solid 5th place. Now, like I said, I thought Max was a pretty.
And here's something to consider, David. The only 2 things that Branch had over all 3 of those guys was muscularity. Pound for pound, he's got as much muscle as anybody, if not more, and conditioning. Now, even though Branch wasn't in his best condition, he still had stellar conditioning. Now, it may not have been his best. We've seen him more ripped and harder, gnarlier, all those catchphrases, but he was still formidable. I mean, this guy still bring those two things have a lot of weight to him.
Yeah, he just to me he loses. He just it's like okay, front double bicep, side chest, side tricep. He just loses so much ground
Yeah.
in those two back shots. I will say it almost seemed a little, maybe just a little bit like he was able to pull that right lat out.
Yeah, that was actually better than it's been.
Yeah, so
But
I don't know if that's a matter if he had that thing worked on or whatever, but to me, it's like he loses. It's like, okay, you're making an argument for him, then it's like the 10 steps forward, 5 back. So I think when he turns around and hits those back shots, which, the shows are one from behind, I think Evan and Juan definitely had him from the back. Max in the back relaxed, yeah, but like we said, Max has a hard time. If you watch him trying to flip out his rear double bicep,
it's a very difficult time.
It's a little bit tricky for him.
Well, he's big. I mean, he's a big dude. He probably needs to kind of, I hate to say it, but almost incorporate some stretching or basically get a little more limber, a little more mobile, so he can stretch that back out when he's hitting it, because that's going to hurt him big time down the road. Because at first glance, he's in the mix. You start hitting shots, the chest was great, the arms, the shoulders from the front, the legs clearly lacking behind. He has done a good job of bringing those up a little bit, but they still need to come up a whole lot to match that upper body. Same type of thing we were talking about with Juan. Upper body got even bigger. Legs, even though they got bigger, you're still at the same point. You're just overall bigger. So, jury's still out on that. I have a tendency to think that judges will look at a veteran competitor like a Branch Warren, somebody who's placed high in the Olympia, who has won previous Arnolds, and even though we get it, guys, you should only judge what's in front of you on game day, human tendency. They're going to look at the strengths more than the weaknesses on a veteran guy as versus a new guy.
Yeah, I mean, I like to look at, and this is, I think a lot of people would tend to agree. I like to look at a bodybuilding show the same way I would look at a race. If you're having a 100-meter dash, it doesn't matter if you've run a million races or this is your first time out of the blocks. If you cross the finish line first, you're the person who finishes. There's never this, you've been running longer.
Right.
But that's bodybuilding, and I can't speak for other judge sports. I mean, you look at the Olympics, you have gymnastics and diving and all this, and synchronized swimming, which is your favorite.
Oh, yeah.
And, so anytime you have a judge sport, I think you're going to have some tendencies like that. I don't know. I would like to see, sometimes I would almost like to see the younger guys get a little bit more of a look, because it's like you have to be concerned about the future of the sport and where it's going and stuff like that. But on that side of the coin, Josh Lenartowicz is really, as far as big names are concerned, he's not really in any, and then no disrespect, but he's not a big name. He's not a veteran. He's not anybody who's been around, but he won 2 shows last year, and he's placed, 3rd at the Arnold and 2nd in Poland. So they are giving the younger guys a look. So it's not like they're just handing things over to the veterans.
I heard an interesting comment on Josh from one of the writers who was sitting next to me at the prejudging, and he turned to me while they were posing, and he said, Josh Lenartowicz is what Evan Sonapani should have been. And it was kind of an interesting comment, because as you thought about it, they have similar physiques. They're both big boys, but he kind of looks like Evan if you blew Evan up a little bit, and it's almost like what you'd expect. So I kind of got the comment. Kind of made sense to me.
Boy, that is an interesting comment. I think Evan is, and I've just discussed this before, Evan is consistent to the point where I think it almost hurts him. We're waiting for either this big crescendo or him to just slip off, and he shows up good every time. Now, you got to remember, Evan is placing top 10 at Arnold's, Olympias and everything, so he's very consistently good. He's just, when he won the New York Pro in 2009, which was his pro debut, and he won the Flex Pro a year later, he had more sweep to his quads. He was a little bit bigger up top, a little bit better condition. And in this sport, we always wait for people to match whatever their all-time best was. So you take, this is your all-time best, and anytime you don't repeat that, it's, they're off their best. And people forget that, it's 2016. We're talking 6-7 years removed from when Evan, won a couple of those shows, and he just won in Tampa in 2013, a few years ago. So Evan is he's still on the scene. He's still doing good, but yeah, I think everybody is still just waiting for that little bit more from Evan. And And Josh is bringing that. I mean, I think Josh is 31 or 32, so he is 5 or 6 years young, 4 or 5 years younger than Evan. But Josh he's come on in a major way, and like I said, he's one of those guys where it's like, okay, Josh is so good that there's no being like, well, he's a younger guy, he's going to have to go through
Right.
his hard knocks or whatever. It's like, no, you just can't deny him.
No, I mean he certainly brought it, and that's a great story. I think Josh establishes himself. Certainly, nobody was happier on stage, short of Kai Green and Cedric McMillan, who always just seems like he's having a good time,
Yeah.
than Josh was. I mean, he was excited. You could see
It's a couple. He's had a couple of big paychecks in the
yeah,
last 2 weeks.
he's done okay.
Now he's going to Australia. I mean, you're talking a kid who just turned pro 2 years ago, and you talk between the last couple of shows, this guy's going to be pushing a six-figure paycheck over the course of about 3 weeks. So
He's just made more money in 3 weeks than he probably made in the last 3 years. So
right.
good for Josh. You know what? I got a chance to catch up with him. He's a good kid.
Yeah.
He's so excited just to be here and kind of. He's still awestruck, really. He's starstruck at some of these guys. But it's cool to see, and it's cool to see a guy like him come in. He's going to be at the Olympia, obviously, so he'll make his Olympia debut coming up this fall, of course. All right, take the pendulum to the other side. John Meadows, why does he take last?
Boy, I don't know. To be honest with you, I mean, I don't know that I would have had him, right up with that top 3 or 4 because those guys were really good. I didn't see him behind Angel Vargas,
Right.
and I didn't see him behind Corey Matthews, although Corey's upper body is pretty big.
Yeah.
John is, and John's the first one who admitted he doesn't have the most aesthetic physique. A little bit of a long torso. If you look at when he hits his front double bicep and his front lat spread, now his lat spread from behind looks light years ahead of where it was about 2 years ago, but his
True.
lats are still a little high, so you don't get that dramatic V taper.
Well, he's very up and down.
Yeah, but in John's defense, his conditioning was probably the best I've seen on any bodybuilding stage, short of maybe Eduardo Correa, that I've seen in the last probably.
John gets in shape. I mean, there is no
years.
denying his conditioning.
It was crazy. So yeah, I've heard that question 500 times since Saturday. Why did Branch get fifth based on conditioning and gnarliness, and then John was placed a little bit lower? Different lineups. You're going against different people. As we had talked, the Branch and Evan and Juan and Max, again, where should we flip-flop these guys? I think there was a little bit more of a clear-cut top group of guys in the 212. I mean, let's take a look at the top guys in the 212. Hidetada.
He can't beat the top 6. He can't beat.
Yeah, he's not beating Hidetada. He's not beating Jose.
Guy.
David Henry was arguably the best he's been in years. Charles Dixon has a ton of muscle. Guy Cisternino, to me, was definitely off his best. He was a little bit soft, but the one thing Guy did is he managed to streamline his physique as far as I'm concerned. Now, he was never a guy who had a physique that wasn't streamlined, but the first thing I saw when he came out is his waist looked smaller, which, I don't know, maybe he wasn't bigger anywhere else, but it appeared that way. Somebody posted a picture online of Guy hitting him most muscular and John hitting him most muscular, and it was when Guy was not flexing his quads. So it was not a fair comparison. But I think
to make the case,
Yeah, but I think a big thing with John Meadows too, that just makes people upset just in general is that everybody just loves John so much.
Well, he's a likable guy. He's a great guy. He's very intelligent. But he's making more money than pretty much anybody on that stage. So God bless him for that. But listen, there was only like 9 guys in the show, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the top 6 he doesn't touch. Nobody's disputing it. It only leaves 3 guys. I mean, could he have been 8th? Okay, what I mean.
Yeah,
but the judges had the same problem that we just talked about with the Branch thing. You got to make a decision here. All 3 you got problems with.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I say about John, and like I can't John is one of these guys that that I talk to a little bit more in the industry, and I have more respect for him. And on top of being a hard worker, there's that underdog story. He worked so long.
Sure.
But if I'm going to play devil's advocate with John, let's say John isn't obviously anybody that gets in that kind of shape has to work hard. But let's say just for hypothetical, let's say John is an arrogant guy who Doesn't
Right.
seem to work that hard. Isn't very good with fans. Got his pro card a while ago. Competes here and there. Let's essentially take the exact opposite of John Meadows is right now, and say the fans don't like him.
Right.
Would anybody be complaining with his position then? And I
Yeah.
think that's what you have to take into consideration. Everybody loves John, and for good reason. And I think that you like, you want to see him place higher. If John Meadows was a complete asshole, which he's
Right.
by no means is he, and then you put him right up in third or fourth place, I think you'd have some people saying like, wow, he's ripped, but his physique doesn't flow. So with giving respect to the bodybuilding fans and saying, hey, you guys know what you're looking at just as much as the rest of us, there is that good guy factor that plays into the disappointment where John was at.
Well,
But
unfortunately, it doesn't play into the judging. There's no personality round. There's no bench press round. There's no scale round where people care how much you weigh. Listen, the judges are judging physiques. He doesn't have the most appealing physique. They can appreciate the work, but he's not in the same level of a Branch Warren. I get the comparisons, but they're not that close. I mean, John has got some faults with his physique. Like I say, and he's been very honest and open with that. John's a very intelligent guy. He's not fooling anybody.
Right.
But, he's very blocky. Listen, there's a reason it took him a long time and got his pro card in the Masters division. And
people kind of forget that.
Right.
John's on the pro stage now, and everybody wants John to do very well on a pro stage, as
Sure.
do I. But, that's a good point. Had he had a really aesthetic and balanced and well-proportioned physique and
he'd won the Nationals years ago,
Yeah, years ago. But, conditioning-wise, John had that entire show on lockdown.
Absolutely.
I think that says a lot about his work ethic. So I know it sounds super cliche. Everybody's a winner, but John's a winner, man.
And to be fair, 8th and 9th pay the same. So you got that. So anyway, we got to wrap things up, Dave. We're running out of time, but we will be back Thursday. Another edition of The Last Rep coming out because we've got the Phil Heath show coming up this week in Dallas, Texas. Mr. Olympia, Phil Heath himself, was there at the expo. I didn't get a chance to catch up with him too much. He had 10 million people around him.
I talked to him a little bit. He seemed to be doing pretty good.
He was doing great. He looks good. He had a tank top on, actually, and he looks like he's in some shape.
Yeah, I tell you what, and we'll wrap this up pretty quick, but Phil is known, the big Pittsburgh show is coming up first weekend of May.
Right.
And we all know that everybody guest exposed there. So we're talking 2 months, and everybody knows that Phil has a smaller, little bit watery look traditionally in the off season, and then he really nails it come showtime. Phil is big right now, and he's in shape, and he signed a belt for a charity event I'm doing for some.
Well, there you go.
Shelters upcoming. So Phil's good by me.
Well, we'll get some info on that charity event, David. It's a very worthy cause, and we'll give some info on that on Thursday in our next edition. But Ed and Betty Pariso putting on the Phil Heath Classic along with Phil, of course, and his team in Dallas, Texas, coming up this weekend. A 2-day event this year because of the size of it. There's over 50 vendors, I'm already told by Ed, and obviously we're expecting a full house. So lots of talent going to be out in the Dallas. If you're in the Dallas, Texas area, look it up, guys. Get yourself some tickets. We will be sold out, so get them before they're gone. But that's going to wrap things up here, David. We'll catch everybody on the boards, of course. And bring the questions, guys. We'll go back to some questions from the fan base from the internet. So bring it, guys. For David Baye, this is Bob Chick saying see ya.